You know, I came on here, or I've come on here on a few occasions, and doing so many videos, sometimes even if I re-upload, through upconversion an old video of a topic, that I did years ago, if not a decade ago, sometimes people, they'll watch it, but, they won't kind of like get what I'm trying to talk about there. Mainly either because the audio isn't that good or other things play a factor. But I decided, you know what? It's 2025. And essentially, overall, when you look at my YouTube career, overall, I basically was, how do I put this? I was basically, on YouTube since almost the beginning. Which is kind of crazy to know, but altogether with the channels I've had, up to this one currently, and some of the other ones I have, at least a couple more I think, one of course isn't this, one is in my profile, channel profile if you will. I've almost been on YouTube for 20 years, altogether. Original channel, secondary channel, and the third main channel, and of course the spin-offs. And during that time, I've talked about a lot of things. I've shared, I've shared some of my fanvid creations. But one of the things I talked about the most, especially with this newest channel, since almost the beginning, was the Lustful Melt gag, which is what TV Tropes calls it. And I know a lot of people had always been wondering, because I'm sure anybody gets asked this question of, why did you become a fan of this trope or this gag or whatever? And I'm sure a lot of people wonder about that when it comes to people enjoying the Lustful Melt gag, or the trope, if you will. And for me, my love of it started back in the mid-'80s. The very late, early 80s to straight up mid-'80s and so on. I'm talking like late 84, all throughout 85, 86, 87, you name it. But you're probably curious as to how I got into it. And I'll tell you how I got into it. I'll tell you how I got into it because I've mentioned it before in other videos on screen and audio-wise where I've talked about it. But I'll tell you how I got into it so that you guys can hopefully have a better understanding as to why I'm a fan of it. The reason I became a fan, like I said, started around very late 84, mostly throughout 85, 86 and all that. And it was at this time that I was being homeschooled by my mom. I was one of those kids that was very hyperactive, very unpredictable in my behavior. And my mom basically wasn't sure, if she and my dad should put me in public school right away with kindergarten. And so what my mom did is she decided, instead of putting him there right away, when he turned 6 years old, which was around 85, that instead of doing that, they were going to put me in homeschool for at least a year or two. So instead of putting me in kindergarten or preschool around 5, 6 years old from 84 and 85, my mom and my dad decided they were going to have me homeschooled by my mom. My mom was going to teach me. And the way this worked out was, as I've mentioned before when I've talked about it, the way this worked out is I would be taught from essentially 8:30 in the morning to about 12 in the afternoon, or 8:30 to 11:30, all depending. And what I mean by all depending, it basically depended on what she was going to teach me that day. From math, from reading to spelling, you name it. And sometimes it wouldn't take 3.5 hours. Sometimes it would take 3 hours. Sometimes it would take 2.5. It all depended on, like I said, what she was going to teach me that day, and also if anything else came up that she needed to take care of, and I'd have to go with her to go take care of it. But then afterwards, she would, if there was nothing else that had to be taken care of afterwards, she would have me sit in front of the television, and she would allow me to watch cartoons. Now, of course, I also had something else that I would do as well if we got done early, because the cartoons I would watch would come on around 12 noon in the afternoon on WTBS, which is now TBS, with Tom and Jerry's Tom and Jerry's TBS Funhouse, or Super Funhouse, if you will. And before that, my mom would watch some stuff that she would watch. Again, and this all depends if we got done early. And what she would watch would be like the 700 Club, or TBN, CBN, if you will. And being a little kid, I wanted to be a lot of things. And one of the things I wanted to be at that time, or I would imitate because I thought, oh, this is a cool job to do. I wanted to be a preacher, and I would get on the couch. And I would do little preaching. I would pretend I'm the preacher and all that for a bit, which my mom reminded me and my family of one time doing a holiday get-together. But anyway, outside of that, when she wouldn't be watching that, or to calm me down, she'd have, she would tune it over to WTBS, and Tom and Jerry's Super Funhouse would come on. And I remember, I know it was around 85. It might have been the spring of 85. I don't know, honestly, but I know it was during the school year to where my sisters were at school, but I was being homeschooled. And it was just me and my mom. My dad was at work. And like I said, after she did the homeschooling, depending on how long it went, and depending on what was going to happen next, we either had to go take care of something, or, we would be, just staying at home and all that. And, the CBN, TBN stuff would come on, and I would imitate the pastors and all that. If none of that was going on and everything, she would tune in WTBS. She would tune in WTBS for me to watch. And like I said, it would also try to calm me down, because I'd be bouncing on the couch, little kid bouncing on the couch, pretending he's a pastor and all that. But anyway, she would calm me down. She would have me sit down and watch the cartoons. And I remember, like I said, it was around the school year in 85. Like I said, I'm not sure if it was spring 85 or fall 85 and all that. I don't really know, because I know I was being homeschooled for a whole year up until the school year of 86 began. 1986 began. That's when I went to kindergarten. I was a late bloomer in kindergarten. I was 7 years old going into kindergarten. Go figure. But anyway, I remember watching Super Funhouse, and the one thing about Tom and Jerry's WTBS Super Funhouse is they wouldn't just feature Tom and Jerry, they would also feature Looney Tunes, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy, and all of them. They would feature other characters like Woody Woodpecker, Hanna-Barbera characters like Yogi, Huckleberry, you name it. And they would also show Popeye. And two cartoons that I remember specifically watching from when Popeye went on there was Beach Peach and Paulet's Voo's Woo. Beach Peach was very notable to me because that was the first time I saw what was known as the 1, 2, 3 gag, the 1, 2, 3, I guess you could say trope, comedic trope, if you will, which was a play, it was a play, if you will, kind of a knock on something that happened in real life. Basically, long story short, from what I've understood, the gag was created based on people around the Chicago area or something like that taking too long to try to, rescue somebody. Like, they did rescue them, but they took them too long to go to them. Like, they took 3 seconds and everything 3 seconds too long to get them out of the pool or whatever was happening to them before they got them out of there. And I think we're able to resuscitate them or get them out just as they were going down, like the 3rd time or something like that. And I don't know if it was, something that they did to kind of signal, hey, I need help here. And that's kind of what instituted the 1, 2, 3 gag. But this gag had always been around in cartoons for a long time. It was in Aloha Hui, which was a 1940s cartoon, which you could kind of say was like a parody of Popeye because it was birds instead of humans. And the guy that was the hero, which was a black pelican or bird or crow, basically did the gag himself before the Popeye parody pelican or seagull came in and tried to save him, but it was the other way around afterwards. But you get the idea. I'm sure some of you that have seen that cartoon know what I'm saying. But, I remember first seeing that gag with Beach Peach, which was a Popeye cartoon. And you see all these other previous and after Popeye cartoons where Olive swims, she's not afraid of water. Here she was, at least the deep part or something like that. And she didn't want to go in. The lifeguard who was basically Bluto, but a different design of Bluto, wanted to bring her in. She didn't want to. Popeye said, "Oh, don't worry, I got you." Brings in a little, I guess you could say, life raft or little toy raft, if you will. And the lifeguard's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna happen." So the lifeguard follows them underwater. He's underwater. He dives underwater, follows them, and pokes or either lets the air out of the floaty, if you will, and it causes Olive to get knocked off, and she gets knocked off into the water, and she's struggling to stay afloat. She's yelling help, and then she goes down, and then she does the one. Then she brings her arm up and does the one with her finger, brings it back down underwater, pulls it back up for the 2, brings it back down underwater, then brings it up for the 3, basically initially, okay, I'm done, I'm history. And before she can go down, the lifeguard, rescues her and everything. But, of course, typical Popeye cartoon, she finds out the lifeguard probably, if not most definitely, was behind what happened because of what occurs later on. But I got a kick out of that gag because for some reason, I thought it was... I mean, I know you're not supposed to laugh at something like that, but it was so funny just the way that all you saw of her for about 3 seconds was just an arm going like, ding, ding. It's like, it's like as a kid you would think, oh, she's becoming part of the water, and all that. But anyway, I saw that on the Funhouse, and then I saw, I think in between. I don't know if I think I saw Beach Beach before. And then I saw Palais Voo Woos afterwards. But I remember one time, I was watching the Funhouse. I think I was, watching it when my mom was making lunch for me and her. And Palais Voo Woos came on. And I just remember it for, not just Olive looking the way she did. Because a lot of people said she was designed as the most beautiful Olive they've seen. But mostly for the end. Because one thing that was constant throughout is that anything that was spoken, or anything that would, actually happen, or I guess, actually happen because, as a result of one thing over the other, would visually be seen. Like, at the beginning, you have Olive dressed up and everything, like she's going to go out. She's supposed to go out with Popeye, but she's dressed up more like going out for a fancy dinner kind of deal. And instead she's dressed up because she wants to watch this International, which is a play on the Intercontinental, which was a show at that time, in the 1950s. And anything the International said on television visually happens with Olive. He tells the woman, your eyes are like limpid pools. She closes her eyes, enlarge, and all of a sudden the little limpid pools. He mentions something about the lips, and she gets a lip stamp, puts it on it, makes the lips, similar to what he's describing. And then throughout, you see a lot of things happen with her. Like, when Bluto disguises himself as the International, the way she reacts is, is a little different than when she would react, in previous cartoons. And then when Popeye tries to outdo it, she turns into an ice block and all that. But it isn't until the end. And just like in typical Popeye fashion, with these, because this has been done before. They've done this trope before with Popeye, Olive, and Bluto. Bluto gets discovered. Basically, he gets discovered when he accidentally, because he offers a sword fight with Popeye. And there's one thing you got to give Bluto credit for in these cartoons, is he obviously has an endless supply of costumes and accessories to go with said costumes to be able to fool Olive and Popeye into thinking he's somebody else. But anyway, like I said, he ends up doing this little sword duel with Popeye, and he stabs Popeye. He has Popeye against the wall, and he stabs him. But what he does is he accidentally stabs the spinach, because as he's pulling the sword out, thinking, okay, I got him, I killed him, he's done. Instead, he ends up pulling out the spinach that he stabbed, and because he stabbed it, it causes it to open up, and Popeye ends up eating it. And then this is how basically Bluto gets revealed, because Popeye just knocks the sword out of his hand and then cuts the suit off. Because I think when you look at the cartoon, in a review analytic kind of way, Popeye kind of knew. It's like the moment the International showed up, Popeye knew. I mean, because obviously when he tips his hat to Olive, all of a sudden the sailor hat comes down on Bluto, and Bluto has to hide it real quickly, like whoops. But you could tell Popeye sees who it is. Popeye sees who it is. But for some reason, he goes along with it. It's like, okay, maybe this is the real deal. He just has a sailor hat like Bluto. But I think, over time throughout the cartoon, he's realizing, yeah, this guy is Bluto. So, but I'm just gonna play along until the time is right. But again, he's kind of doubting it, but he's leaning more towards like he knows who it is, based on maybe seeing the hat dropped, unlike Olive. So anyway, he ends up basically, long story short, revealing that it's Bluto and basically beating his ass. Basically punching him so hard that Bluto basically, flies back against the wall and has a TV land on top of him, because he's going to try to throw a TV at, Popeye, and instead Popeye just bam, knocks him for a loop, and basically the TV falls on Bluto, and his head just comes out of the broken screen and all that. And Olive, she's impressed by this, saying Popeye's wonderful. Popeye then ends up eating another can of spinach, and this causes him to become a version of the International himself. And he tells Olive that she has a date with him. He kisses her hand. She turns all red to the point that it causes her to kind of inflate a little bit in the face, to where all of a sudden her face gets all round, and all of a sudden steam comes out of her ears and all that. But then she says, then she sighs, and then basically says that she's just like butter in his hands. And as she says this, she literally ends up melting into a flowing running puddle of butter on the floor, with just her eyes and smile remaining. Now, it's not the first time she's said this. She said this beforehand in the Fistic Mystic, after being kissed by Bluto, who was in the role of a mystic guy or something, and she ends up turning yellow. She doesn't melt the way she does in Pauline's Woo-Woos. She just turns yellow, and basically Cortez, or I guess you could say, I don't know if the word would be, kind of melds her body to the steps, basically to the steps of leading up to the like little staging area that they were on. It's basically like she got flattened by an anvil. Like when you see in those classic cartoons, a character gets flattened by an anvil or some kind of item above the stairs, and then you see the item come down first, and you're like, okay, what's the character? And here comes the character. The body is contouring to the stairs. Basically, the body is shaped, kind of like moving, flowing down, in the shape of the stairs and all that. So, basically, that's what Olive did in Fisted Mystic, but the difference with Pauline's Woo-Woos is she melts completely into a flowing puddle of butter on the floor that flows down the floor, and like I say, all you see is her eyes and smile remaining. But then you see like these little areas, these little dry up areas, like what you would see in a puddle sometimes when it's drying up. You see like these little dry up areas forming, and if you watch it on DVD or you slow down that scene through YouTube or whatever, you'll notice that as you get towards the fade out iris, you notice that one of the dry areas gets right near her eye, and her eye literally feels like it's gonna, it gets right near her eye to a point that it touches her eye, and it feels like her eye is gonna dry up as well. So yeah, basically, that was the first time. I know it took a while for me to get to this, about 20 minutes. But basically, that was the first time. Well, I wouldn't say 20 minutes, about 17 minutes, actually. But, that was the first time I'd ever seen that gag. When that happened, I became a fan of it. I became a fan of it to the point that I would, basically want to see it again and again. I would always want to know, okay, is this, because I even remember, like, I think the next day I was watching and I was like, is it going to come on again? Is it going to come on again? And I remember it did come on again that year, but it came on like around, I would say, summer, fall time that year, because, of course, they got to go through all the different Popeye cartoons, or at least the ones they have access to, or had access to. So I waited until about, I would say, late summer, fall, while still being homeschooled, or getting ready to be homeschooled again, for it to come on once more. And once again, I saw it, and I enjoyed it. And and because I've been such a fan of that, that's what kind of got me into the Lustful Melt gag. On MeTV Tunes with Popeye and Pals back last year, I think around, what was it, September, October, they had Paulet's Voo Woos as one of the cartoons they were going to show. So I said, you know what, I'm going to DVR it on Friendly TV and watch it when I want to. And I currently have it on DVR through Friendly TV. I also have the 2-disc 75th anniversary Popeye set released by VCI, where disc 2 has Paulet's Voo Woos, because I think that's one of the cartoons that is, believe it or not, public domain, and that's hard to believe. Now, I don't think it's totally public domain, because I think when you would upload it, you would get a copyright by Warner Brothers. But yeah, it is public. It's kind of like semi-public domain, because Warner's hasn't put it out on physical media, Blu-ray wise, and all that yet. But maybe they will in the future. We'll see. But yeah, that's basically how I got into it, because of that cartoon, and seeing it for the first time in the mid '80s. And then, of course, watching Funhouse. Like I said earlier, they had Looney Tune cartoons as well. And I remember that was also the first time I saw Swooner Crooner, which was a Porky Pig cartoon. And this was at a time where these cartoons, despite their depictions, characteristic depictions of certain people, they were still being shown. And Swooner Crooner, of course, had that. But I remember watching it, and there was this one scene in there where you had this Frank Sinatra-like rooster serenading all the hens. And this one hen, which was a black and brown hen, gets serenaded to the point that she says his name. She says the name Frankie, and then she melts down into a wobbly puddle of black with her little red frill, or whatever it is they call it, whatever it is it's called on top of chickens, if you will, a little Fred heel, mohawk, whatever. She melts down into a wobbly black puddle, almost like she melted down and became like a fried egg. She wasn't melted down to where, okay, she's just a steelless puddle. She melted down and she was still wobbling, like an egg being fried. So that was like the second time I saw the gag, and that was through Looney Tunes. And then, speaking of Looney Tunes, I saw it again, but it wasn't necessarily Lustful Melt. It was about this Martian wanting more, more outside of what he was getting on his planet and everything, and all that. So they had a gag in there. It wasn't similar to it, but still, it was kind of like, in that vicinity. And then we fast forward to the 1990s, and of course you have Tiny Toon Adventures, and this is where we get the gag. I wouldn't say on steroids, but we get the gag coming back in a huge way, because you have Babs Bunny doing it in Europe in 30 Minutes, which was an episode that, believe it or not, after 97 was not seen on the air as much, if not at all, out of respect for what happened. But around like mid-2000s, early to mid-2000s, it came back very rarely on Cartoon Network. And now you can see it anytime you want through digital or through DVD or what have you. But yeah, Babs did it in Europe in 30 Minutes. It wasn't kind of the romantic Lustful Melt, but it was more of a Lustful Melt out of admiration. And what I liked about this one too is this was the first time we'd ever seen a character melt into a puddle. But, it was also the first time, I'm trying to find the right words to say, it was also the first time that the character remained that way while other characters ran through them. Yeah. Babs ended up getting ran through, by Buster, Plucky, and Hampton, and then she reforms afterwards. But she gets ran through to the point that just like a regular puddle, she splashes, little bits of her splash all over the hallway of Buckingham Palace. So, yeah, that happens, and she reforms afterwards. Then she does do it again in the finale, Wonderful Tiny Toon Christmas, after Buster kisses her. But instead of completely melting, this time around, she melts through her clothes. And all that's remaining is her clothes and her eyes that fall on top of her eyes that fall on top of her clothes and all that. Now, of course, Plucky does it, in Acme Bowl and in Pluck Tracy. But Pluck Tracy, he's able to reform and everything after he gets sent down a trap door after he's melted. But in Acme Bowl, he has to get reformed by the Perfecto Prep leader, Roderick Rat, who's trying to recruit him, or at least bribe him into joining Perfecto Prep if he gives him the playbook for the Acme Bowl against Acme Lou. Which, of course, Plucky basically is a double agent here, if you will. But yeah, Roderick has to use a scoop, or not a scoop, but a cup, to scoop up Plucky and pour him out back to normal because he melted in a hot tub, if you will, at the caressing of a female Perfecto Prep student, I think, called Morgana or Morgan or whatever. So yeah, he did it. He and Babs are the only ones that did it, more so than any character, more so than Buster, more so than anyone else. Then you get to Animaniacs. And this is where they really, I think, solidified the character that would do it probably more than anyone. Now, they did it, of course, in Space Probe with Dot, when she saw her thoughts on the screen, and she saw the start of her being, hugging, or basically in the arms, or at least, in the embrace of, I guess, a Mel Gibson-like parody. And after she sees that, she starts sighing and waving her hand next to her, and you see the steam coming up around her, and the steam basically is representing that she's melting, and she does. She literally melts in the chair to the point that only her little flower, I guess you could say, flower clip remains, along with her ears that flop down on top of her melted form. And then the device that's reading her thoughts falls right on top of her, and then the aliens lift up the device going like, okay, what just happened? And everything. And yeah, she does pop back to normal, but just imagine you're the aliens and you see this, you're like, did we kill her? But yeah, that was a funny part there. And she was actually the first one, I think, to do it, female wise, in the show. And then the other character that did it more unanimously, of course, was Minerva Mink. And she did it in Moon Over Minerva and Meet Minerva. Now, production-wise, Meet Minerva was supposed to be first, not second. But because, basically there was I would assume, a delay, in the animation or something, basically Moon Over Minerva got completed first, so it was the first to come out before Meet Minerva. Yeah, and that's even shown in the DVD set, that Meet Minerva is the second one on Volume 3, while Moon Over Minerva is the first one on Volume 2, and both are on Disc 1 of both sets. Both on Disc 1 of both sets. And in Moon Over Minerva, she's not the only one that does this. Wilford Wolf, who's kind of like a nerd, he does it when she basically is teasing him, manipulating him and everything, and he melts to the point that you think he's going to be completely melted, but he's not. All you see after he's melted is his head sticking out. And then he's saying after Minerva leaves, he says, I can't feel my legs, basically indicating he's melted, or she melted him. And then when she does it, because Wilford is a werewolf, when she does it, after seeing him in his Fabio-like form again, she says, Yahoo, my man, and she literally stands straight and melts. She melts down to the point that basically, just like with Plucky in the Acme Bowl, when Roderick had to reform him, Wilford in his werewolf form, after Minerva melts, has to pick her up, as I've described before, like a wet towel, and wring her out back to normal. Because, as I've joked before, Wilfred could have easily just walked off and everything, gone and got a dinner, got the attention of all the other females in his werewolf form, or while in his werewolf form and everything, gone to dinner, went to a movie, whatever, come back a few hours later, and Minerva would still be there melted on the ground. And as I've said before, there was someone cosplaying as her on Facebook where, they got to ask this person questions cosplaying as her. And one question that was asked was the melting that she went through in Moon over Minerva being like going to sleep, being put into a nap? And they said, yeah, it's basically like you're going to sleep. You're basically in a nap, if you will. And you have to be woken up. And that's basically what happened here. He had to pick her up and wring her out to, wake her up and everything, like a wet towel. So that's what he did. Basically, she does the gag. He picks her up. She's dripping a little bit, and then of course as he's wringing her out. You see all these other little bits and pieces of a melted form flying all over the place, and he wrings her out, basically dries her out back to normal. And then in the other one, Meet Minerva, she melts literally through the arms of her best friend's cousin, because her best friend asks Minerva on the phone, "Hey, can you show my cousin around town?" And she's like, "Sure, no problem." And everything, because they're BFFs. And this is through an answering machine, of course, and everything. She hears this, I think it's an answering machine or something. I gotta go back and watch the cartoon. But anyway, she agrees to it. And when she sees him, of course, he's a hunk. He's a male mink hunk, if you will. And she literally goes through her wild takes and everything. And then after she does one gag going like, yeah, she says, I'm trying to think of what she says. She says, she says something like, "Ooh, baby, that's what I like." She runs right towards him. And everything after she spins back into her normal outfit, because she ends up spinning into this outfit, this suit and tie kind of thing that Newt did when he did his wild takes on her. And basically, she spins back into her normal outfit for that cartoon. She literally runs into the arms of her best friend's cousin, and then leans back, sighs, and melts through his hands. Literally melts through his arms and his hands. But she doesn't melt like straight through. Like, okay, she's gonna melt. She goes right through the middle, of his hands. Like, he's holding her and she goes right down the middle. No, she splits. And she splits literally in half. That's what I'm trying to say. She melts by splitting in half. So like one side of her goes this way, goes to the left, one side goes to the right, and they meet together into one melted form, or melted puddle form that has her closed eyes on the surface, and it's all just like a white puddle with a little yellow trimming. But then of course she does reform afterwards into an obnoxious boat horn. But yeah, it was Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs brought this gag back in a huge way, and I was happy to see it. And Minerva doing it twice in her cartoons. The first time, Moon over Minerva, and then the second time, Meet Minerva, or if you want to look at it chronologically, production-wise, Meet Minerva the first time, Moon over Minerva the second time. To me, that was kind of setting up the idea that she was going to be the character that would do it a lot more, or do it often. They even had her do it in a comic. In one of the short stories she was in one of the Animaniacs comics, they had to do it there when she saw a mink hunk as a cashier at a perfume store or something like that at the mall. And she literally melts to the point that her head and neck are the only thing that's sticking out of the puddle. And she's saying, "Whoo, is it hot in here or is it just you?" But anyway, to me, when I look at the cartoons and then I look at that, from that comic, that kind of tells me that she was going to be, like I said, the one that would do this gag a lot every time she would, see a hunk. See somebody that was a hunk to her and everything. She would do it so many times. And in fact, somebody even utilized, that gag in a little story they did to where Minerva, it's kind of a very NFSW story, but basically their idea for Minerva is she likes balloons because, big inflated balloons, because they, kind of gets her in the mood, gets her into very NFSW territory, intimacy. And literally, it gets to a point to where a balloon literally swallows her up, and it's causing her to literally not just, you know, get riled up in the intimate way, but it causes her to melt, and she even says she's melting. So that tells you right there, if somebody takes what she's been known to do in the cartoons and in the comic, they're taking that and saying, hey, let's apply it to our story. That tells you that they believe the same thing, that she was probably meant to do that gag a lot more had she been given the opportunity to star in more cartoons and everything in the original OG series. Now, of course, there were other examples throughout the years through other cartoons, you know, from other countries as well as here in States. Like Captain Flamingo had it happen with Elizabeth in the Blindsided short. They had it happen in Groove High in the animated flashback segments that the main characters would talk about with the female character there, where she would melt into a puddle of water, then form back up. So they've had it happen numerous times, but for me, looking back at this gag and everything, and why I'm a fan of it, it all goes back, like I said, to 1985, basically 1985, when I was watching the WTBS Super Fun House with, you know, the Tom and Jerry one, if you will. I'm trying to think about what I was going to say. And that's what kind of got me, like I said, into enjoying the gag. Because I'd never seen that before. Now, I've seen shows where, you know, the female character will say they're melting, but then they don't visually melt. They don't do that. Instead, it's just, you know, an expression because they're in a certain mood at that time. They're in a certain mood at that time, if you will. And this, to me, was basically, animation-wise, a visual representation of how that character feels. You know, it's not just, you know, a character saying it, they're visually doing it. And I like that. And I really did. And I'm still a fan of it even to this day. As strange as that may sound. But guess what? There are people that are fans of the Lustful Melt gag, trope, and the melting trope in general, just like me. There are many hundreds, thousands, maybe millions out there. Well, I wouldn't say millions, but there are literally over thousands, I would guarantee, that are fans of the melting trope, the Lustful Melt trope. Just like there are probably hundreds to thousands that are fans of the UB trope, the unbirthed trope, or unbirthing trope, the SV trope, the soft vor trope, and all that. You know, there are fans of those gags, those tropes, those fetishes, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because you know this is all that, you know, being a fan, that it's all fictionized, that it can't happen in real life. It can't. So, you know, to me, that's why I've been a fan for as long as I've been. You know, because I know, even as a kid back then, that, you know, it's all in fun. It's fictional, it's fun, and, you know, it could happen at any time period. You know, it can happen at any time period in a story. Whether somebody wants to write it in just for fun, you know, to add to the story, whether it's a NFSW story or a regular story, or if it's a new cartoon that they're working on, whether it's a YouTube online exclusive, streaming exclusive, whatever, they could say, hey, this is going to be very Tex Avery, Looney Tune inspired. I want to add this gag in there. And they will. And they will. They would have the power to do so, and it would probably work. Excuse me. It would probably work. Unfortunately, the only time we ever saw any, like, with the new Tiny Toon University, the only time we ever saw any resemblance of that in this new Tiny Toon University was in the first episode with the dancing sequence between Buster and Babs. And that was it. We never saw it in the new Animaniacs, as far as I know. I wish we did. And I don't know if Tiny Toon University is going to keep going. If it does, I would hope they're going to put that gag in there very soon, because I think the new interpretation of characters like Fifi, Plucky, Babs even, and maybe even Shirley and Sweetie, I think could really benefit from that gag being part of the story, or whatever stories they're a part of at that time. Now, if it's happened already, I would love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments. or in the live chat. But anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to come on here and talk about this. I know it's over 40 minutes, but I just wanted to get it off my chest and, do this as well to let those that may have not seen the original versions of me talking about this, because I've done over like 14,000 plus videos, if not more. I just wanted to come on here and talk about it, give you my history on it and all that, let you know why I became a fan and everything. And hold on for a sec. Sorry about that, but like I said, I just wanted to come on here and let people know that probably don't have the time to look at the original videos that are in parts or been pieced together recently. I just want to let you know about my history and why I became a fan of the gag and the trope, and let you know I'm not the only one out there. I am not the only fan out there, believe it or not. But yeah, just like I said, just wanted to come on and let you guys know about that. Give me your thoughts and everything on what I've had to say here. Let me know if you've been a fan of the trope as well, and when you got into it or what intrigued you about it. Let me know in the comment section below, as well as in the live chat if you haven't already. Also, guys, if you want to support me, links are in the description. Check me out at rumble.com at bwroses. Check me out at odyssey.com at bwroses. Check me out at all your favorite audio podcast affiliates like iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, Audible, Pandora, and many more. Also, check me out at VENMO.com at bwroses. Check out the Cash App and the Venmo to help out there. Also, check me out at DeviantArt.com at BVW1979. Also, check out the Teespring store as well for merchandise you can't get anywhere else, as well as at inkbuddy.net at bwroses. Also, ring the bell, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are on what I've had to say. Again, let me know if you became a fan of it or what intrigued you about it. And yeah, just love to hear what your thoughts are. And again, I'm doing this to catch people up on my history that might be new to the channel. But let me know what your thoughts are. And until next time, I am out. But I'd love to hear what you have to say on this. And again, this is for those mainly that are new to the channel in recent years.